Are you at a stage in life where moving in with your adult children seems like the logical next step? Perhaps you've been looking at your finances, weighing the cost of living alone versus pooling resources, and thinking that it might be simpler for everyone involved if you just sell your home and move into your son's or daughter's house. It sounds so inviting. You'll save money on rent or mortgage payments. You'll be around the grandchildren every day, and your family can help take care of you as you grow older. But before you make this decision, I want to share a sobering truth that has haunted me, personally and through the experiences of others, for years now. Choosing to give up your own residence and move in with your children after age 70 might well be one of the most catastrophic mistakes you can make, one that could derail your finances, shatter your self-esteem, damage your health, and severely strain or even destroy the relationships you hold dearest. Let me begin by talking about how this realization dawned on me. Several years ago, I was full of optimism as I approached my 72nd birthday. My body wasn't as spry as it used to be, but my mind felt sharp, and I genuinely believed living with my family would bring us all closer together. I vividly remember the day I signed over the deed to my home, convinced that combining households would be a lovely transition, sparing me from some of the more mundane tasks of homeownership. I imagined cooking together with my daughter, helping my grandchildren with homework, and having them close by for heartfelt conversations in the evenings. But it didn't turn out that way. Instead of the harmonious life I had visualized, everything seemed to unravel over a matter of months. The problem started with minor disagreements, like who paid for groceries and whether I was intruding on their personal space, and quickly escalated into more serious disputes. It felt as if the rules were constantly changing, and I wasn't sure what role I was expected to play. Eventually, I realized that not only was I uncomfortable, but I was also losing money, losing my independence, and losing the closeness with my family that I had cherished for so many years. It's not just my story either. Let me tell you about Martin, a widower who was 73 when he made a similar choice. He had spent over 4 decades in a cozy house in Maine, a place filled with the memories of raising his children and spending quiet evenings with his late wife. Martin's daughter, Lisa, lived out in Oregon with her husband and 2 teenage boys, and she proposed that Martin sell his Maine home and move in with her family. She said, "You'll be near your grandchildren, Dad, and you won't have to worry about the upkeep of your old place anymore. It'll be a win-win for all of us." Martin trusted Lisa completely. So he sold the house where he had lived for most of his adult life and consolidated what remained of his personal belongings into a storage unit. Then he trekked the entire distance from Maine to Oregon, believing he was stepping into a new chapter that would be supportive and loving. At first, living in Lisa's home felt like a vacation. But within half a year, Martin saw his once respectable savings, around $180,000 from the sale of his old property, reduced to a fraction of that amount. He confided to me during one of our late-night phone calls, shaking his head in disbelief, that he wasn't entirely sure how so much of his money vanished so quickly. It might have been the joint projects he agreed to fund, the repeated outlays for family expenses, or some loans here and there that no one ever formally documented. He noticed Lisa becoming more distant, almost resentful, as if she expected him to pull more weight around the house or pitch in for costs he never would have faced if he'd stayed in Maine. Eventually, the tension escalated to the point that even his grandsons avoided being around him because the atmosphere felt so thick with conflict. He's now weighed down by depression and health issues he never had before, and he's trapped. He doesn't have enough money to buy another home, and he has no obvious escape route. From Martin's experience, let's pivot to Harriet, a 72-year-old who moved from Florida to Texas to be near her son Marcus and his growing family. Harriet had sold her Florida condominium for $210,000. She thought it would be simpler to combine finances with Marcus, since she was moving in with him anyway. He set up a joint bank account for them, insisting, "This will be so much easier to manage our shared household expenses, Mom." Harriet, who wanted to trust her son, deposited her entire nest egg into that single account. Over the next 8 months, $60,000 went missing, drained by Marcus's repeated claims that he needed funds for urgent home renovations, his daughter's private tutoring, and even a new truck. Harriet noticed, with growing anxiety, that every time she tried to question a withdrawal, Marcus looked offended and told her that she should be grateful he was giving her a place to stay. The sad truth was that Harriet had willingly placed all her money under Marcus's control, which complicated any legal recourse. Her fear of conflict and her reluctance to alienate the only child she had left kept her silent. By the time she realized how dire the situation was, she had lost most of her life savings. Reflecting on these cautionary tales underscores the danger of merging finances with family. Even in the most loving households, money becomes a wedge topic. Is your monthly Social Security check going straight to household expenses? Are you expected to contribute a certain percentage toward the utility bills, groceries, or even mortgage payments if your children own the house? Then there are the random expenses. A new car for your adult child, or an unexpected medical bill for a grandchild. Where does your contribution end? The lines blur easily, leading to resentment on all sides. A specialized financial advisor once remarked to me that something about living under one roof intensifies the sense of entitlement or dependence, and it's easy to see why. When you're all entangled in daily living, boundaries vanish. The best advice in this area remains: keep your finances separate. If you do decide you want to move close to your children, think about renting a small place or a studio in the same neighborhood. Don't hastily combine bank accounts, and never assume that family ties will automatically protect you from poor financial choices or exploitation. I learned all this the hard way. But finances are far from the only concern. Once you move in with your children, you're going to grapple with another serious pitfall: the abrupt loss of independence. Imagine having to ask your daughter or son every time you want to leave the house, or consult them before inviting a friend over. If you're not used to that, and no adult in their 70s is, it can be psychologically devastating. Consider Henry, who was 75 when he gave up his small rental home after his wife passed. His daughter, Chloe, insisted, "We want you here with us. You'll never have to worry about living alone." Henry admitted that in the first few weeks, it felt nice to see his daughter so frequently and to be near his two grandsons. However, tensions arose when Chloe began scrutinizing his diet and gently but firmly banning foods she deemed unhealthy. If he wanted to meet his buddies for coffee early in the morning, Chloe would insist on driving him, so he had to schedule everything around her availability. Over a few months, Henry started to sense that he no longer had a say in his own life. That feeling corroded his sense of self-worth. His friends told me that Henry, once bright-eyed and active, barely left the basement suite he was occupying. After a while, he was diagnosed with clinical depression. It wasn't malicious on Chloe's part. She was genuinely worried about her father's well-being, but that dynamic of parental oversight reversed in a heartbreaking way. Your children might have the best intentions, but the shift in roles occurs almost imperceptibly. You become the dependent, and they evolve into the caregivers, which means they set the rules. It's a day-by-day progression. They might begin by reminding you to take your medication. Then they start scheduling your medical appointments, controlling your diet, or telling you which neighbors you can safely visit. Next thing you know, you're not allowed to drive because it seems too dangerous for someone your age. While each restriction might even be well-meant, the cumulative effect is that you cease being an autonomous adult. You turn into someone who needs permission for basic activities. This role reversal can profoundly affect your confidence, your zest for life, and ultimately your health. And then there's a heartbreaking truth about family bond themselves. We often assume that moving in with family is a guaranteed way to strengthen those ties, but too many real-world accounts show the opposite. Mona was 74 when she had a minor fall. Concerned that this could happen again, her daughter, Jade, brought her into their household. Although Mona had always been close to Jade, they chatted constantly on the phone and visited every weekend. Living together spelled trouble. Mona felt invisible in Jade's household, as if she constantly had to tiptoe around her adult daughter's routines. Jade, for a part, grew weary of Mona's small requests. Jade's husband became increasingly absent, working later at the office to avoid the tension at home. Mona's grandchildren were scolded more often for making noise that might disturb her, and soon they resented her presence. Instead of forging deeper connections, they ended up with bitter disputes, silent dinners, and simmering resentments. Within 9 months, Mona decided it would be better to move out to a senior complex. But by that point, the damage was done. Their once warm relationship never fully recovered. What's worse, Mona missed 2 years of her grandchildren's lives as a result of fractured relationships that had formed in that stressful environment. When people ask, how could something like that happen to us? Our family is close-knit. I remind them that friction accumulates rapidly when everyone shares a space. A small annoyance, like making noise late at night or leaving dishes in the sink, becomes a flashpoint when it's repeated daily. Mixed signals can abound. Are you a guest who should help by doing all the housework you can manage? Or are you a permanent resident with an equal say in the rules of the household? Are you still the parent in the family hierarchy? Or have you become an extra responsibility for your children? Blurred lines create an environment where bitterness seeps into the relationship, sometimes irreversibly. Health complications compound these tensions. It's not just psychological stress. Physical ailments often follow suit. There's a sobering body of research from geriatric specialists that shows seniors who lose their sense of autonomy or uproot themselves to move in with family often encounter a spike in health issues. High blood pressure, increased risk of strokes, heightened anxiety, and more rapid cognitive decline in those already facing mild dementia. Ronald, at 76, had been living on his own for years in a small townhouse and managing his arthritis and heart condition quite well with daily routines and doctor's visits. But when his son, Neil, insisted it was best for Ronald to move in, Ronald lost a structure that kept him stable. He found it challenging to keep up his regular morning walks because no one was available to accompany him at the time he liked to go out. Meal times shifted unpredictably, so he often ended up taking prescriptions at non-ideal hours. The noise from a busy household led to chronic sleep disruption. Within 6 months, Ronald was hospitalized after a minor stroke. His doctor was certain that the spike in stress and loss of consistent routines contributed to the incident. Even though Ronald's son had the best intentions, the upheaval ultimately jeopardized Ronald's health far more than living alone ever did. One of the scariest parts of the situation is the increased susceptibility to different forms of elder abuse when older adults live with their children. Now, I don't say that to imply that every child is lurking, ready to exploit their parents. But real-world data shows that financial exploitation and other abuses often arise from proximity and blurred boundaries. When older parents live separately, there's a natural distance that allows them to stay in control of their own decisions. But when you move in with your adult children, you may feel compelled, often out of gratitude or a sense of obligation, to entrust them with your legal or financial responsibilities. Diane, who is 77, has a particularly harrowing story. She moved in with her son, Toby, after she spent a week in the hospital due to pneumonia. Toby seemed like a loving caretaker. He helped Diane recover, took her to her follow-up appointments, and convinced her that he should be on her bank accounts just in case of emergencies. Diane also signed a power of attorney, drawn up by Toby's friend who was not a specialist in elder law. She didn't think twice about it. Toby was her only son, and she believed he would always have her best interests at heart. One day, Diane realized that Toby had been selling valuable items from her antique collection behind her back, claiming it was a way to free her from the burden of clutter. When she threatened to leave and go back to living on her own, she discovered Toby had quietly transferred the deed on her old Florida property into his name months ago and even took out a mortgage on it without telling her. With no finances left to secure a different living arrangement, Diane felt trapped, uncertain how to reclaim her legal independence. Stories like this underscore the critical need to protect your assets and consult real elder law attorneys before putting any child on your bank account or signing over your property. Each case I've highlighted underscores the same few points. Living with your adult children can put you in a vulnerable position where your savings, health autonomy, and family connections are at risk. The psychological weight of feeling like an intruder in your child's home, the financial pitfalls of merged bank accounts, the breakdown of parent-child respect. These aren't anomalies. They are playing out for countless seniors across the country. Seniors who assume their family relationships would shield them from harm or misunderstanding. So, what should you do if you're nearing 70 and wondering about your next steps? One of the first pieces of advice is to remember that proximity to your children doesn't necessarily mean living in the same house. For some people, a smart idea might be to downsize into a small apartment or condo in the same neighborhood or city as your children. That way, you can see them frequently, enjoy those close bonds, and still retreat to your own domain. If you worry about covering your living costs, investigate subsidized senior housing, or consider sharing a place with one or two other retirees. Being a homeowner isn't your only option. Sometimes renting is preferable because it reduces your responsibilities and frees up finances for travel or healthcare without tying up money in a property. If you require assistance for daily activities, a professional in-home caregiver can be hired. Such services are specifically designed to help with personal needs, light housekeeping, transportation to medical appointments, meal preparation, while still allowing you to maintain your own space and schedule. This arrangement costs money, of course, but many seniors find that the peace of mind and the retention of personal freedom are more than worth the expense. Moreover, I strongly recommend that you speak with an elder law attorney before making a major life change like selling your home or signing over property to a family member. Attorneys who specialize in elder issues will advise you on how to keep your assets safe. They know about trusts, wills, and powers of attorney, and they understand how to draft documents so that your intentions are clear and your child can't abuse the authority you grant them. Additionally, it's vital to have open and honest conversations with your family, your children especially, about boundaries and expectations. Are they imagining that you'll pay half their mortgage if you move in? Do they expect you to become a full-time babysitter for your grandchildren? Are you expecting complete freedom to come and go without notifying them? These might sound like smaller, routine matters, but disagreements over daily expenses, chores, or responsibilities can escalate quickly when everyone is under one roof. If you choose to move closer but not in with your children, talk about how frequently you'll visit, how you might help each other, and what lines shouldn't be crossed. Clarity now prevents heartbreak later. The reality is that aging is inevitable, and some seniors do eventually need more direct care, especially those with advancing medical conditions. If that's the case, explore assisted living communities or continuing care retirement communities, which often have graduated levels of support. The advantage is that you're in an environment specifically tailored to older adults' needs, with activities, healthcare, therapy, and meal plans that help you maintain a healthy social life and daily routine. Living with your child is not your only choice for receiving support. In fact, dedicated senior communities are often safer spaces for your physical health and provide better mental stimulation. Plus, your family can visit without the constant friction of trying to adapt their home environment to your needs. Finally, let's circle back to something more emotional. The fear that living alone means you're shutting yourself away from family. In truth, living separately often helps preserve the quality of your interactions. You stay in control of your environment and finances, and that fosters respect between you and your children when you do spend time together. The time you share tends to be more intentional and enjoyable. Visiting each other, going out for dinner, or watching a movie at your house, or theirs remains a choice, not an obligation forced by the constraints of a shared living space. I don't share these stories to sow fear or mistrust. Instead, I hope they serve as a wake-up call. People like Martin, Harriet, Henry, Mona, Ronald, and Diane didn't go into their arrangements expecting to end up financially strapped, socially isolated, or in legal turmoil. They genuinely believed that living with their children was the best way to stay connected and safe. But reality showed them how drastically the situation can go wrong when money, power dynamics, and daily routines become entangled in ways that are difficult to untangle without damaging relationships. If you're on the brink of making a decision about moving in with your children, take a step back. Discuss alternatives openly with them. You might be surprised to find that they too are anxious about how it would all work, an anxiety that can lead to resentments and misunderstandings if left unaddressed. Share the reasons you want to stay independent, and ensure they understand that this is not about rejecting their help, but about preserving your well-being and protecting the family bond. If they push back because of worries about your safety or loneliness, research local services that can check in on you or help as needed. Show them you have a plan in place that keeps you safe without completely upending your life or merging finances. In summation, I want to emphasize one last point. Your independence is something you spent decades cultivating. You worked hard for your savings, your property, and your sense of self. Handing over that independence can be a shock to your system, and once lost, It's incredibly hard to regain. The heartbreak of deteriorating family relationships, the risk of winding up broke, and the looming potential for health complications aren't worth the convenience you might gain by living under your children's roof. Time and again, stories confirm that such arrangements often yield more heartbreak than harmony. If you feel that your family needs to hear this message, don't hesitate to talk about it with them. Suggest that they read similar cautionary tales or research resources designed for older adults. Maybe they don't realize what's at stake or what professional care services exist. If you're in a situation where you're already living with your children and it's not going well, consider how you might gracefully back out. Speak to a legal advisor. Explore your housing options and have a heart-to-heart conversation with your children about the boundaries you need. Trust me, it's far better to address these issues head-on than to let the tension simmer until it erupts into a painful confrontation that permanently damages your family connections. Above all, remember that you deserve a life of dignity and respect in your later years. That might mean living independently in a smaller unit, or in a senior-friendly community, or even continuing in your long-time home with the right support network. Regardless, cling to your agency. Don't surrender your decision-making to others, and don't risk losing your hard-earned money by merging it all into someone else's account. Take the initiative to contact professionals who can guide you. Elder law attorneys, financial planners, geriatric care managers. These are experts well-versed in protecting the interests of seniors, and their guidance can safeguard you against exactly the kinds of horror stories I've described. In closing, please know you are not alone. Every day, seniors face the pressure to move in with adult children, often because of well-meaning intentions on both sides. But the wave of regret and heartbreak that can follow is entirely avoidable. Draw on the resources out there. Stay informed. Keep those lines of communication open with your family, but remain firm about your boundaries. Your final decade should be enjoyed, not merely endured. And maintaining your independence is one of the most powerful ways to ensure that you safeguard both your emotional health and the cherished relationships that matter most.